This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Thursday, the 1st of April, 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. We begin this half hour with the nation's third mass shooting in just 3 weeks, this time in Southern California. The shooting killed 4 people, including a child, at an office complex. A 5th person was critically wounded. Police say more than 10 shots were fired at the 2-story complex late Wednesday evening.
The officers discovered shots that were actively being fired, and our officers did engage in an officer-involved shooting. It's a very tragic incident, and we're doing our very best to make sure that it's investigated thoroughly, and we'll give you as much information as we can.
The suspect was injured, but it is unclear if that suspect suffered a self-inflicted wound or was shot by police. The exact ages and names of the victims are not known at this hour. Police are also trying to determine if there is any relationship between the shooter and the victims. Washington is still digesting President Joe Biden's multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan. The president outlined the cost of the plan and how he proposes to pay for it, but he said he is open to other ideas of funding as long as it doesn't mean additional taxes for those making less than $400,000 a year.
We're going to raise the corporate tax. No one should be able to complain about that. It's still lower than what that rate was between World War II and 2017.
President Biden is moving ahead with the plan. At the same time, leading Republicans are uniting to push back on what they believe would be an unavoidable tax hike. We turn now to our southern border, where tens of thousands of children are risking their lives for the chance to enter the United States. New video shows some of the horrors they're facing and at the hands of smugglers and in crowded U.S. detention facilities. Our Heather Sells is following this story.
This Border Patrol video shows smugglers dropping 2 sisters, ages 3 and 5, over a 14-foot border wall, leaving them in the middle of the New Mexico desert in the middle of the night. Agents rescued the girls, taking them to a local hospital for a checkup. The girls are just 2 in a sea of 18,000 unaccompanied migrant children in U.S. custody. Border Patrol agents say many have suffered unimaginable atrocities at the hands of drug cartels and smugglers.
And as I got closer to her, I noticed that she couldn't speak. And I asked the medical staff what happened. And the reason she was going to the hospital because she had gotten gang raped. And the reason that she couldn't speak was because she had lost her voice in the process while she was getting raped.
Texas Rangers say they rescued a 6-month-old baby girl who was thrown into the river by smugglers. This just days after a 9-year-old girl lost her life trying to cross the river. This week, the Biden administration allowed journalists to access its main holding center. Here, 500 children occupy rooms meant for 32.
We're starting to see younger and younger kids being brought over by their sponsors, by relatives, by grandparents, whoever it is in the family that is actually asking for these kids and paying the fees to smuggle these kids into the country.
In this facility, they're forced to sleep on cold floors with foil blankets.
This is a reflection of the desperation you see in parts of Central America.
Migration expert Andrew Seeley says poverty, made worse by 2 hurricanes, has led parents to send their kids on alone, knowing the Biden administration will hear their cases. Many teenagers are coming to escape violence.
Their other alternative is to be pressed into service in a gang, or if they're girls, sometimes to be pressed into service as a girlfriend of a gang member. And if you don't want that life and you want to be able to help your family, sometimes heading up to the border, as dangerous as that is and as scary as that is a better option.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
The results of a vaccine study on young people are in, and it suggests the Pfizer vaccine gives children ages 12 to 15 100% protection against COVID-19. The small but promising study gives new hope to parents. At the White House Wednesday, the director of the Centers for Disease Control said the coronavirus was the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States last year.
In 2020, about 3.3 million deaths occurred in the United States overall. This represents a 16% increase in deaths from 2019. COVID ranked as the 3rd leading cause of underlying cause of death after heart disease and cancer.
At the same time, some 15 million batches of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine have failed quality standards and can't be used. Employees at Emergent Solutions, a production facility in Baltimore, employees reportedly mixed up 2 vaccine dosages. Shipments of the vaccine are now delayed pending a Food and Drug Administration investigation. The White House says this will not affect the Biden administration's timeline to have enough vaccines to immunize every American adult by May. I want to turn now overseas. China's influence in the Middle East got a lot bigger this week with a $400 billion economic deal with America's arch enemy in the region, Iran. The partnership comes as Tehran seeks relief from crippling U.S. sanctions, and China looks to expand its global influence. Our international correspondent George Thomas takes a look at what this means for American interests in the region.
First off, the deal means China gets to pour billions of dollars into Iran's banking, telecommunications, transportation, and infrastructure sectors over the next 25 years, including huge investments in nuclear power, ports, and oil and gas industries. The cash infusion coming as the Islamic regime continues to endure the economic strain of U.S.-imposed sanctions and looks to China to ease their pain.
The investment for Iran means that China is backing it. And that is perhaps the most important benefit for Tehran. It knows that come hell or high water, Beijing will be behind it.
In exchange, Iran gives China a steady supply of oil to fuel its expanding economy. China imports more than 300,000 barrels of Iranian oil every day. This deal gives it even more oil at a deep discount.
Remember, the U.S. has sanctions on purchases of Iranian oil. And China, for the last year or so, has been buying it openly in violation of those sanctions. This is another indication, a sort of an in-your-face maneuver on the part of Beijing.
The partnership means the communist government now has a strategic foothold in a region historically dominated by U.S. influence.
The Chinese are solidifying economic relationships, not just with the Iranians, but across the Gulf as well. And I think most importantly, they are looking to use the Iranians as a pawn in the larger game of strategic competition against the West, and in particular against America.
The agreement calls for closer military ties and more intelligence sharing. Experts warn the new China-Iran axis could mean potentially more money to fund the Islamic regime's proxy forces in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, and further destabilize the Middle East.
Because it gives Iran backing, undermines every other country's diplomacy in the region. This is going to be a problem not only for Washington, but also for Jerusalem. It's going to be a problem for the Sunni Arab states.
Shi Wei-Wang, a Chinese-American, spent 40 months in an Iranian prison on alleged spy charges, gaining his freedom in a prisoner swap in 2019. He says the China-Iran deal is likely to force the Biden administration to give up more concessions as it seeks to rejoin the 2015 nuclear deal forged by President Obama and scrapped by President Trump. There's talk of a new proposal for Tehran with possible sanctions relief in coming weeks.
The Biden administration's eagerness to re-engage Iran is creating a conducive environment for China to entrench its influence and interest in Iran. And then if China can do that, other countries in the Middle East would be compelled to work with China closer.
As America pivots to Asia to confront Beijing's rise, it leaves a potential vacuum in the Middle East that has global powers like China and others only too happy to fill.
China, as well as Russia, are looking to capitalize on vacuums that the U.S. may leave, whether it's in the Levant or in the Persian Gulf, and use their military relationships, their economic relationships, and their political relationships to offset what they perceive to be declining U.S. power.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Coming up, skeptics have refuted the resurrection of Jesus Christ since the first Easter morning. We're hearing from experts who say it happened without a shadow of a doubt. We have that story next. But first, here's a look at the stories trending here at CBN News at this hour. We'll be right back.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN NewsWatch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
This Easter season, celebrate our risen Savior with your CBN family. Join us on the CBN Family app for a virtual communion with Pat, special Easter teachings from Gordon, and more Holy Week reflections and services. Bake a springtime favorite with Wendy, and watch Terry share the meaning of Easter with her family. Don't miss this special time of celebration on CBN Family.
Welcome back. Atheists and doubters of Christianity want the world to join them in their belief Jesus did not rise from the dead. These skeptics have refuted his resurrection since the very first Easter morning. But CBN's Paul Strand shows us why some experts are taking on today's skeptics and proving the validity of the resurrection.
Christianity's power all hinges on the fact of the resurrection. But detractors for centuries have come up with scenarios to explain away the reality of the resurrection. One is the wrong tomb theory. Everyone just went to the wrong tomb, an empty one, and assumed Christ had resurrected. Indiana Dr. Joseph Bergeron studied the crucifixion of Christ and its aftermath for 10 years.
Going to a wrong tomb and finding it empty doesn't present to anybody's mind that the person resurrected from the dead.
Alex McFarland is another top defender of the faith at events like Bible camps and apologetics conferences. He points out another well-known fact.
Pilate had dispatched a cadre of Roman soldiers to guard the tomb.
So everybody knew where it was.
There's also the swoon theory that wants you to believe instead of dying on the cross, Jesus only passed out, woke up in the tomb a couple of days later, rolled away the huge stone, and escaped. McFarland says impossible.
Christ has been at least 2 to 3 days without food or water, dehydrated. He was beaten severely, huge loss of blood, nailed to the cross.
And if the always fatal crucifixion process hadn't already killed him, Roman soldiers made sure.
They plunged a spear into his chest because to allow any possibility that he would survive the crucifixion would mean that they would die themselves.
McFarland explains the swoon theorists then present this unlikely scenario.
He revived himself. He moves a 2.5 to 3 ton stone. He overcomes a dozen Roman soldiers in peak physical condition.
McFarland also sees a moral problem with what the swoon theorist wants you to believe.
He told his disciples he had risen, and he allowed them to go forth and preach what was false and die for what really wasn't true. This compromises the moral, righteous nature of the person Jesus.
The stolen body theory proposes that the very disciples who fled in terror after the crucifixion then risked death to steal Christ's body from the tomb and then made up the whole resurrection story.
They sufficiently regather and summon up enough bravery to overcome Roman soldiers. I mean, this could have been, at best, arrest, if not execution and death. They move the stone, they take away the body of Jesus, they say he's risen.
But that would have been the opposite of Jesus' life and teaching.
Everything he's all about is predicated on righteousness, virtue, truth, holiness. Here is truth personified, and they build a gospel on a lie. Just doesn't make sense.
And all but one of those disciples was put to death for this gospel.
People sometimes will die for some misguided belief that they have. Nobody dies for a hoax.
One popular idea is that everyone who saw Jesus alive after his death was just hallucinating. Bergeron points out, though, in the rare documented cases of group hallucinations, they all see different things.
None of them experience the same exact thing.
Because it's all in their mind. McFarland points out the risen Christ appeared several times and interacted with hundreds of people, as recorded in 1 Corinthians 15.
Paul says he was seen by up to 500 brethren at once.
Hallucination hypotheses can never explain the group appearances, the group experiences the disciples had with Jesus.
Hallucinations are not contagious. Hallucinations generally don't appear in different places to different groups of people. You generally can't talk and converse with an hallucination, and you certainly can't eat with an hallucination.
So why not just believe in what the Son of God promised he'd do? Resurrection.
His identity, message, credentials were validated by the fact that he did what none of us could do under our own power. He rose from the dead.
I'm more convinced that what we believe as Christians is true and accurate than I ever have been.
Like so many others across the millennia, Bergeron contends the best explanation for why Jesus wasn't in that tomb Easter morning is what Christ's disciples have always said. He came alive and rose from it. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Indiana.
Still ahead, two friends from different racial backgrounds dive headfirst into answering questions most people are too afraid to ask. Hear why these pastors say these conversations are needed when we return.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Saturday night at 6 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
Last month, Evanston, Illinois made history when it became the first American city to pay financial reparations to Black Americans. Now more American cities say they may do the same to amend for slavery. Two voices take on the issue in their podcast called I Hear Ya. One side opposes reparations, the other side supports it. And that's where this week's Global Lane picks up the story.
The first thing
about reparations is what happened to even cause it. One of our discussions Alex and myself were having is like, Odell, I don't believe in reparations. I don't think I need, an example he used was, I shouldn't pay for a hamburger that I didn't eat. And I said, Alex, I understand from your perspective, but from my perspective, as a descendant from slaves in Abbeville, South Carolina, a lot of our labor was stolen. A lot of our land in the agrarian South was stolen. A lot of ancestors got hung and killed and murdered. So we look at it somewhat different. A lot of the women who happened to be of African descent were raped, and our babies were taken from them and sold. So we look at it differently. So do I think that reparations just be a check? I think that's the worst thing could happen, a reparation just be a check. I think just like systemic racism, reparations should be something systemic, long-term, that's gonna benefit people. Because if you give someone a check who doesn't understand money, we all know in a capitalistic society, a year later, that person's gonna be broke. So I don't think that a check to individuals who qualify is the answer. I think we could be more creative. We're the richest country in the world. We're the most gifted country in the world. And as long as we continue to say, in God we trust, and believe in God, and don't step away from God, we'll be the most blessed country in the world.
First, Odell, but then I'd like to have Alex respond to this. I've talked to people who say, hey, I had nothing to do with slavery. My ancestors didn't own slaves. Some said they had ancestors that actually fought or died in the Civil War to free blacks. So why should their tax dollars go to pay reparations? That's what they've told me. So might it possibly, this whole thing, create more racial division in our society, Odell?
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is not asking white people to pay reparations. This doesn't have anything to do with white people. The reparation here is America. If you look at America, the country we love, we're saying to America the same thing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said to America. You wrote a check, America, in the form of a dream that bounced. The check was returned insufficient funds. So this doesn't have anything to do with white people. The art against America. America, you have blood on your hand. America, you benefited from slavery, not white people. America.
You don't fix an injustice with a further injustice. And to pay money to people who never were slaves, extract money from people who never owned slaves, that's not just. And frankly, let me say, one of Odell's points that I do agree with, there are a lot of people that aren't prepared to handle a check, like in the case of the Northern City giving $25,000. I mean, there are a lot of people that $25,000 would actually be a cruelty to them because of what they would probably do to themselves with it. And one of the parts of America that was our founding principle of equality before God and equal rights, and we didn't live up to that. So I would argue we've already paid some reparations in the form of tens of thousands of soldiers and individuals whose blood was spilled in the Civil War, and all of the fighting and the investment to get the Emancipation Proclamation law, and then the equal rights, the civil rights movement of the 1960s and civil rights legislation. We have given equality to all. Now, there are some echoes and some ripple effects of everything from Jim Crow to prejudice that needs to be gone. And I think only the Lord and good, consistent messaging can do that. I mean, this is a gesture that will, I assure you, it will cause more animus between the races. I didn't get enough, and then others will be resentful that their taxes have gone up to pay for. Reparations, I think, will be disastrous for racial progress in America.
And to hear more from Alex McFarland and Odell Cleveland, you can do that on the Global Lane. It is on this station and on the CBN News Channel this evening at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Coming up, March showers brings April flowers this year. When and how long are the national cherry blossoms in full bloom? We'll let you know when we come back.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, You'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible, yes, Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
His story has inspired the world for thousands of years, while some scholars doubted his very existence.
We are shedding some light on the story of David and Goliath.
This is ancient biblical Jerusalem.
CBN Films presents Written in Stone, House of David.
Extraordinary discoveries made headlines around the world.
Written in Stone, House of David. Get your DVD copy for a gift of any dollar amount.
It's officially cherry blossom season in the nation's capital this weekend. About 70% of the famous cherry blossoms around the tidal basin opened up, signaling spring has finally sprung in the D.C. area. While the National Cherry Blossom Festival is in full swing, fans are encouraged to watch the events online or from a safe social distance. If you are in the area, be sure to check them out in the next 2 weeks. The blooms are short and sweet. Time for your Thursday Thankful, and I hope you'll join me in this prayer of gratitude. God, I thank you for the comfort of knowing you are enough. You are Jireh, my provider. You are enough, forever enough, always enough. In fact, you're more than enough. With that word, I encourage you to make today a thankful Thursday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us the address right there on your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We would love to hear from you. Join us again right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.